Welcome Linux enthusiasts. This is the 10th episode of our Linux learning series. If you have missed any of our previous episodes, please click the link above. In this video, we'll be talking about how to configure networking interfaces. If you are looking to upskill in Linux and get globally recognized certifications, you can check out our DevOps course. The link is given in the description below. Alright, let's start the video now. Alright, so let's talk about how to configure the networking interfaces. This is important because if you want to communicate to internet or intranet within machines, you should have an IP address and you should have a way to communicate. So networking interface, as we have already talked in the previous chapter that about the IP addresses and about the interface. So this is nothing but a physical NIC card which has the interface, and we do need to set up the IP address. So previous versions of Ubuntu 16.4 and latest, prior to 18.4, we were using networking manager, but since we are already on latest version of Ubuntu, so any machine which is beyond Ubuntu 18.04, we will be using Netplans, as you can see in the PPT. So Netplan is a utility which helps us to configure the networking interface, and after that we set up an IP address and we communicate within machines. And after that we will also see how to validate the networking manager, how to verify if the networking manager is working or not working, and how to set up the IP address using networking manager. Also sometimes you can set up both depending on the requirements, but it's always being suggested that either you choose the Netplans or you should go with the networking manager. So without wasting any time, let's go to the hands-on and see how to set up the networking interface using Netplans. Okay, all right, so this is the machine where I have set up this. I'll show you the files. You don't have to easily remember the commands whatever I'm going to execute, but rather you can just make a note if you would want to. It's always okay to take the references of the commands. It's not always recommended to remember the command, so you just need to know the files where the configuration exists, and then later you can just set it up. So we have a file inside etc netplan called, so there are three files currently you see on my machine. One is 50 cloud init YAML. So this is the configuration whenever you try to set up using Netplan. So I'll open this file and I'll show it to you. How does this file look like? So you can see this by default in this file you can see the default configurations whenever you have not set up anything. So this file will be usually having this 3 lines. This indicates that you are currently rendering on the network manager, which means you're dependent on the network manager to set up an IP address for you. And if you have an DHCP setup as well, then you can set up this configuration where you are trying to set the machine saying that we'll be using Ethernet, which NIC card of Ethernet, which is ENP0S5, and then DHCP version 4. Are you going to set it up to yes or no? So in case of DHCP, you can mark it to yes. But we are not using network manager and not the DHCP. We will be using from scratch. So you can just see how does this file look like. So currently this file says that on the interface ENP0S5, we have DHCP is disabled, and these are the two IP addresses range what you can see. One is 10.211.55.12/24, then another one is 192.168.1.1/24, and the routes that we have to define the routes, because this is how the traffic is going to traverse to our machine, right? So the default route what we have set up is via 10.211.55.1. And the name servers, if you remember in the DNS we talked about the name servers, which means the servers which provides the IP addresses to the host machines, right? For example, google.com. Google.com certainly have an IP address 4.4.4.4 or 8.8.8.8. It could be anything. So currently we are using the DNS servers as a name server. These are the two entries that we have set up in our file, 8888 and 1111. So let's save this file. And after this you can run this command called sudo netplan apply. What does this command do is basically it tries to apply the changes whatever you have made inside this configuration file. Okay. Now you can see via IP link show, just to see, okay, this is the interface that we have. This interface is currently up, state is up. And if you want to see the IP address, then you can see IPA command that we have already discussed in the previous chapter as well. On this interface, there are 3 IPs. One is this, and another one is this. We'll be talking about shortly what is this IP and how did it come. So these are the 2 IPs which are coming from the Netplan configuration files. Okay. You can, there is one more command, basically you can do netplan try. So this what it does is on the fly it tries to make sure that the settings that you have done is correct or not. If you are sure that the settings whatever you have updated in the configuration file is correct, then you can press enter. Otherwise you can skip it as well. So this will just to kind of lively try the Netplan configuration whatever you have set up without setting it up so without applying it. So you can just try it out. After that we can just see about the configurations, and we can manually add the IP address as well when and where required for you. So I'll show the command how to add an IP address via Netplan manually. If you don't want IP address to be fetched from the configuration files, and then you can set up IP address manually on the host machine. So there is a command called sudo ipaddr, then add, and then you can tell the IP address. Let's say this is a range, and then which device, enp0s5. So you can add the IP address like this. And similarly there is a command, you can delete the IP address. Via this command you'll be able to delete the IP address, and it will help you to remove if there is any IP address which is configured on the interface. So you don't have to always, as I said, that you don't have to remember the command. You can take the reference, you can just note down, and then later you can use whenever it's required or needed, right? About the applications apply and the try, we have already seen it. Now let's talk about the system manager. So there is a command to identify the status of the network manager. So currently we see systemctl, we will be talking shortly as well in this chapter or next chapter. This is the utility which helps us to identify or find out the status of any any tool which is running on the Ubuntu machine or not. Any Linux, you can say systemctl is a standard command. So currently we are seeing the status for the network manager is running, and if it is stopped, which means then only the configuration setup is done by the Netplan. If this is also running, there are chances that you see a file which is already created with the network manager, or it's just running but it is not basically hosting any IP address or having any IP address configured. But when we see this command etc netplan directory, if you see this directory, you see there is one more file called ntnm. This is nothing but a network manager. So whenever the network manager is enabled or running and we try to set up the IP address via network manager, it automatically creates this file, this YAML file, which has the similar information what our init file has it. So this is another file which I create a backup. Backup is required when, let's say, later if you want to take a reference from the file, you can set it up and then change it. But let's review this file, the content, what it has it. Okay, Netplan 90. Okay, so this is clearly saying that we are currently using network manager. These are the 3 IP addresses range. These are the name servers, the routes that you have to define, and the network manager name and its UUID. After that IP addressing methods, and if you are using manual, then you can use manual, otherwise let it be. And if you want to set up a proxy, then you can set up a proxy. The references for the configuration for the proxy, you can find it on the Google and then set it up according to your ease. I'm just trying to show up here how do you set up the network manager and how do you apply the changes. So currently the status is already running. If it is stopped, then you can start the network manager using systemctl start network manager command. it will ask for the sudo password. Okay, and if you want to stop it, you can stop it. Okay, now if you see the status, it will be showing as stopped, inactive, which means it is not currently being used. Okay, so nmcli is the command which basically helps network manager identify if the service is running or not, or if it has any IP address which is assigned by the network manager. So nmcli is the, you can understand like this, it's a shortcut of network manager CLI command. It's a utility which helps to identify if the connection is enabled or not, if it is active or not, for the network manager. So what if we restart or start the network manager? Later if you run nmcli, you will definitely see the connections because the network manager is currently in the running state. I'll show the status as well. Again, it's in the running state, and after that we see, okay, there are two interfaces. One is Netplan ENPS. So it says that, okay, you have an interface already with the name Netplan, and then this is a UUID, it's a unique identifier ID, then it's of Ethernet type, and then device name is ENP0S5. So device, it's a device type file, you know, which has the networking configurations there. And second one is the loopback, which always every machine has the loopback address 127.0.0.1. okay, so this is how you can see the network manager. After that, what if you want to set up a static IP via nmcli? So there are commands that you can run. nmcli connection mod, I'm just taking the reference of the command, and you can also take a note, but you don't have to always remember whatever the command is. So let's say I am trying to set up another, since I have already set up one network manager, Netplan ENP0S. Let's change this for this time and say ENP0S5. Okay, the connection name basically, and then let's say IPv4 dot address and 172.16.2.2, okay, /24. okay, it says unknown connection. No worries, you can modify the connection whatever we have existing. So Netplan, and okay, this is ENP0S5. okay, now let's see this nmcli connection show. Okay, fine. Now let's do one more thing. Let's try to add a gateway as well. nmcli connection mod Netplan 5, then IPv4 dot gateway and 172.16.1. okay, let's add a DNS as well. Netplan ENP0 IPv4 dot DNS. Let's see 4.4.4.4. that's it. After that we can set up the method. Okay, IPv4 method manual, because we are setting up this manually, that's why the method I'm choosing is the manual. And after that nmcli connection up and then connection name, which is Netplan ENP0. So now you see there is one connection which is successfully activated. Okay, this is the activation path it has chosen from the network manager location. Now let's review if we have any file created or another entry in the same location file which has been added. Let's try this, opening up. So now you can see this connection timestamp. This is the connection that I am trying to add, 162.16.2.2. okay, this is the gateway for this connection. It's a manual connection, and there is one more entry for DNS has been added. So and then this is already, the roots were already created. This is a new entry that we have seen which has been added after the making changes. So you can make changes n number of times you would want to using network manager. So these are the commands. You can just modify the connection and set up the IP addresses and their methods and stuff, and then you can just make sure that run the network manager restart command to update those configurations by the network managers. So yep, so these are the two changes. Now we see that third one has been removed because we started using the network manager, so it is taking the configurations from the network manager. Okay, all right. So now how do you verify the active interfaces? So there is a command called addr show. This will show you, or IPA as well, you will be able to see that address. How do you identify what all interfaces and what all IP addresses information are there? Then you can ping on the DNS that we have set up, if it is going through or not. Okay, currently it's not going through. Let me check the Wi-Fi that is there. Maybe we need to switch off the network manager settings, so we can do this. Connection systemctl stop network manager service. Okay, or let's say sudo netplan apply. Now you will be able to ping. Okay, it's not connecting. No worries, there might be some connection issues, but once you have the internet connected, you should be able to get the ping packets, ICMP packets returning from that IP address. Let's try to ping the local machine and see if it gets connected. Okay, it's connecting, going through. All right, what if on this machine 192.168.1.1, that is also going through. Let's try the netplan command to try it out. Okay, no worries. We will also validate what is the changes that has been done in the netplan configurations, if in case there is any. Okay, so this looks good. Fine. After that, we will see that we have already identified, okay, what is the interface of the device which has the connection stability, and then we can verify, okay, this is the connection name netplan enp0s5 via this command nmcli. Then let's try to use both. So as we have already seen, so we just have to start the service here, systemctl start. Okay, so once we start this, you must be seeing that there are two files which are already present inside netplan directory. One is 50 cloud init and one is 90 nm. So both are representing that we have netplan as well as network manager, both are running, and they are running in parallel and having the IP addresses information assigned successfully. Okay, so but it's always recommended to have one interface, a utility to set up the interfaces and configure the IP addresses. The reason being, there might be chances that it will create a conflict and it will not able to communicate to the internet as well sometimes. So because the conflict will create for the interface, that it is the traffic which is going through. So if that interface is not being able to capture the traffic for some reason due to the conflict, so sometimes we might face such issues. So but yeah, should be aware about how do you set up the configurations. There are two ways. Netplan is one way, another way is via network manager, and then you can you are aware about the files. The files both are present inside etc netplan directory, and whenever you start the network manager service, automatically a file which is created in the YAML format. So YAML is a kind of a good format. So usually in DevOps things, we see YAML is the common file, what Terraform is uses or some other utility which uses. So that's how the indentation of the file and the data which is stored inside those YAML files are being captured. So it's a good way of representing things. So that's why most of the things and configurations are being stored in the YAML these days. So you should be get familiar with the YAML and how does it look like. So that is about it. So now let's talk about SSH. So SSH and what is a remote login. So you might have seen so far, if you are working in any industries where you have a user account locally on your machine, but for the company servers and stuff, you have the machine which is remotely located. The machine could be located at anywhere. Let's say you are logging from the Mumbai region and you want to connect to the Canada. That machine has a remote access to you, which means that with your user, you should be able to directly access to that machine. There are ways to set up the authentications. Let's say, for example, sometimes you can set up via IP addresses, passwords. Sometimes you can set up just by the passing the keys, which are the public and private keys, so that you should not be able to always ask for the passwords. Once you have the authorization fingerprint saved at the remote machine, you should be able to access the remote machine in no goal. So that is how the usage of SSH. SSH basically works on port number 22. It's a secure shell. Secure shell means we are providing users a facility where they can access the remote machine via a secure channel or a way. How do they communicate? So in the PPT as well, you can see here that there is a machine and there is a firewall. So usually firewall or a forward proxy can be there up front of the machine, client machine, and then there is a cloud which represents the internet. So the traffic is going via the firewall or a proxy going to the internet, and then after that it is setting up there is a SSH server somewhere located in the public internet, which is the remote login machine, and then which runs usually on the port number 22, and then it's trying to create a connection from the client machine which is behind the firewall. So that is how kind of a representation. And then sometimes people prefers to create the tunnel as well, so which basically stores the secure tunneling the way a client wants to communicate and connect to the machine. So there is a way to set up a tunnel as well. In this chapter we'll be talking about how to set up SSH. We will see the hands-on, what are the commands and how to set up, and what are the configuration files similar to what we did in the network managers. As such, also you can do the same things. Like you can see the configuration file for the SSH. If the utility is not installed on your machine, then you can use apt-get command to download the utility, and then the configuration file will be there. After that, we will be seeing how to create public and private keys using SSH keygen command, which will help you to create your own key pair, and then you can set up the public key to the internet, and then you can authenticate via the private key. So we will see as such things. So let's go to the machine. So this is kind of a good hands-on where we have a two machine. One is a server machine. So you can see currently this is server machine 2. I have one more machine which is a client machine. So we will do the SSH from the client machine onto the server machine. Just want to see if the SSH is running and how we can communicate to it, right? So let's log into the client machine as well. Okay, let's see. Currently I'm logged in with the parallel user. Okay, and let's just move this window here a little. Okay, yeah, fine. So if you don't have the SSH installed, you can use this command sudo apt install OpenSSH server. Since it says that OpenSSH server is already at the latest version, so you don't have to install it again. That's fine because I have already set up this. But in case for yourself, if you have not done the SSH download and you have not set it up, so you can use this command to update or install the OpenSSH utility. After that, we will see the status for SSH command. So systemctl status is SSH. Currently the SSH is running on this machine, and it is running since 22 hours ago. So on 15 January it started running, and then after that the service is currently running on port number 22, the listening port. After that it's tells about the some of the information about the SSH, and it has some logs and stuff. You can see it. Accepted password for Himanshu one user. I was trying to set up and connect via Himanshu one user. So yeah. Now if you don't have it running, and you can start the service via the same command, sudo systemctl start SSH. Okay, then you should be able to see the status of this service, which is in running state. Okay, after that, if you want your SSH to be always up, you can do systemctl SSH enable. So this commands basically enable the, after reboot of your machine, what happens is by default the configuration goes away, which means it is not active, the service is not in the running state after the machine is boot up. So it's always recommended to have this option enabled. So what it does is, whenever the machine will be booted, automatically the service will be up and running, so that you will not see any type of a glitch when the user will try to communicate via SSH. The reason being, see, there is always a cluster. It's not like a single node which is running on SSH and then you are trying to connect to that single node. There is always a cluster of multiple nodes. What if one cluster node goes down and then other one is also active? So at the same time your connection can go to the different node via the load balancer, and then that node will be able to connect, right? So what if the the node which is in the reboot state and the SSH service is not up? So it's always an add-on for the admin to enable the service or start the service whenever the machine gets boot up. So that's why this is like no human intervention required. Whenever this system gets boot up, after that automatically the service is running. So this is the command systemctl enable, and after that whatever the service, network manager or SSH or Netplan, whatever you want to have it, you can just have it up. So we have set up for the boot level. Now let's talk about the configuration files. So all the configuration files are mostly stored in the etc directory that we have already discussed in the previous chapter of our file hierarchy systems in the Linux, right? So etc sshd _config. So this is the file which is the default file for the SSH configuration. So there are a few options which you need to enable. One is you can set permit root login no. What does it mean is that for the root user we never allows to connect to the remote machines. The reason being, root user is not recommended. So whenever any user wants to go, so the user has a private key and then communicates via the public and private authentication to the remote server. Why do you need the root? So root is never required, but in case you need a super user privileges after logging onto that remote machine, you can always switch user, right? So the su command you can always perform, and then you can switch from the normal user to the root user. But default to create a public and private key configurations for the root is never recommended. So you should always set this permit root login no. After that, there is another configuration I have enabled, public key authentication yes. Okay, authorized files, this is the file where all the authorized public keys are stored at the server. So currently stores in this location. We will see that location. What does this file looks like? Okay, now let's see it here parallelly. Let's just zoom it up. Okay, now what if, yeah, sudo vim etc ssh authorized keys. Okay, so now you can see that this is how the file look like. So there is one user which is public key already enabled or present in the authorized keys file. Because I have already tested this as such. So this is the public key and this is the email address basically the user gave while creating the key formats. So this is using SSH RSA is an algorithm how this key is being encrypted, and then once the user provides its private key, it allows user to basically authenticate to the machine. So this is that file. After that we will see password authentication, yes, which means that we are also giving an option to the user for authenticating using passwords. If you set up this no, which means that password authentication will be restricted, only the key authentication will be enabled in case you have set up public key authentication to yes. If you don't set up it to yes also, in that case as well, you will not be able to authenticate via either of these methods. Then there are some configuration about the Kerberos if you are using and stuff, X1 forwarded gateway ports and stuff. So all these things are not needed. So these are the two configurations, and the port number also by default port number is port 22. So these are the important configuration which are required, and I have showed it up to you just to see which is minimalistic required for the SSH to set up and configure. Now we will also see firewall rules in case there is any firewall rule which is enabled for SSH. So we will so there is a utility called ufw allow. We will say this. Okay, the utility is not there. Okay, we'll see this later though, not a problem. But let's try to authenticate to this machine. So currently I am at the client 1 and I want to do SSH. Okay, so first I'll show you the user that it has it. So I am currently switching to the user called Star Agile. Okay, so Star Agile user is there. This is the IP address of this machine. Okay, now let's check the IP address of this machine as well. This is the IP address of this machine. Before authenticating via SSH, we just need to make sure that the machine should be able to basically communicate between each other. If the communication is not there, then you will not be able to communicate or do the SSH login. So I'll just try to see if I'm able to ping to this IP from my client machine, because I have changed the IP settings via network manager. So I'm not sure if it will work. I doubt it will work. It is not able to connect, right? Because the IP addresses of this machine is in 10 series, and similarly for this also was in 10 series before setting up the network managers, because that is how the parallel desktop utility gives the IP bridging and creates it up. So let's see if we can make some changes in the some file. And what this thing is there. Let's delete this. Okay. I'll just remove network manager configuration files. Okay. Now sudo stop this sudo netplan apply. Okay, now it has come back to that IP, and now we will try to ping to this IP 10.211.55.12. Okay, now we have the communication which is stable and connected client to the server machine, which is good because that is very important. So usually since all these remote machines are hosted in the internet, VPNs and stuff, so nothing to worry about. That is already being checked and configured by the admin, whoever is going to set up the SSH. So now let's try to authenticate to this user onto the server machine. Just make sure that at the server side also the user should be created. So let's see if we are able to find out. Okay, so now we see the user is there, but it has not logged in and stuff, so we are not seeing any entries. Another way to verify is you can check etc passwd grep for Star Agile. Okay, so the entry for the Star Agile user is present. Okay, now how do you connect? You have to say SSH is the utility, After that, username star agile @ and server IP address or host name. In case you have resolution of host to the server, then it's good to have a host name or IP address, whatever you can just configure. Okay, so it has given me this prompt. So this prompt says I am able to connect. Now it's asking me, how do you want to pursue? Basically, it's asking me, are you sure you want to continue the connection? If you are say yes, which means your fingerprint identity will be shared and will be shared across the server, and you should be able to communicate. So let's say yes, and it's asking for the password. Let's try to give the password of star agile user at my server. Okay, so currently if you are seeing, so this is a password based authentication. It's not a key based, because it's asked for the password. It should not ask for the password if you have a key based authentication. And currently I am at my server. Okay, you see this is the server IP, and similarly you see this is server IP 10.211.55.12. okay, this is my client IP. Wait, let me do this. Connection is closed. 12. Let's try to connect to 12. Okay, now it's connected to 12. So this is the server IP. So that is how you can initiate a connection via SSH command. Okay, let me close the connection, and let's see. What if you try to do a search from here, star agile @ okay. All right, so now it asks for the password. The reason being it asks for the password because from currently you are logged in with the parallel user. So you should go to the star agile first, and then from that user you should be able to communicate to the star agile user which is present at the host at the server machine. Let's review the configuration for star agile user at the server machine. Okay, so this currently I'm logged in with star agile user. Okay, now let's verify its keys. Alright, so there are two keys which are present. So I might have created previously these two keys and have already added and setting up in this machine. That's why you are seeing two keys are present. But let's try to create a key from scratch, and then let's try to enable it. So for that there might be one more user which is created. So there is a user called testing SSH. Okay, all right, let's see if this user has any authorized keys or not. It does not have any authorized keys file itself, which means the SSH was never set up for this user. So we will try to set it up. Let's quit from star agile and switch to testing SSH. Okay, we are logged in with the testing SSH. Alright, if you want to see if the SSH keys are present or not, so there is a directory in your home directory. So currently I'm just checking the home directory of testing SSH user, and there is a hidden folder called SSH. So there is no such file or directory created because we have never tried to set up the SSH keys. So now let's try to set up SSH keys on the client machine, and we will be shifting that public key to the remote machine, so that via private key which client represents, and then we'll be able to authenticate. So first let's try to use key generation. So there is a command called SSH keygen command. You can create and encrypt the key with whatever the algorithm. So I'm using RSA here, and I'm choosing 4096 bytes, and email address you can choose any email address. Let's say I give testingsh@gmail.com. Okay, Yeah, so once you execute this command, basically it tries to create a public private key pair. It says where you want to save this key file. So usually it creates and save it in your home directory. So for testing SSH, the home directory is /home/testing SSH. Then there is a hidden directory called SSH. Inside that with the name ID_RSA. So the private key always being stored with the name ID_RSA, and the public key stores with name ID_RSA.pub. Wherever you see .pub, that represents the public key. Okay. It's asking me for any passphrases you want to set for the key. I don't want to create any passphrase because, again, it will ask me for the password for the key decryption. So what is the point of having a key when, we want to avoid that password based authentication, and not the passphrases also. Though using passphrase can give you a facility where you can have an add-on security on top of your keys. So for now, I'll just leave it empty. Just click enter, and then it says, okay, the key fingerprint is generated. Your public key is stored inside this. You see the public representation called .pub, and then this is a private key. This is the key structure, and this is the email address that I have stored it. So let's verify actually. In our home directory, these two files are automatically created. Fine. Now we will try to copy this key to the remote machine, because without copying the public key, we will not be able to authenticate to the remote server. So we have to do the SSH copy. But before that, for our sake of understanding, let's try to attempt the SSH and see what is the error we get. Okay, to the remote server 12. Okay. Let's try to do this. Okay, it allows me to authenticate. The reason being, it is chosen the method called password based. So we have to disable that password based method as well. So let's try to disable in this SSD configuration and go to this. Let's search. Yeah, there it is. Okay, I'll say to no. Okay, now let's sudo systemctl restart SSH. Okay, now let's try to attempt it again. Okay, it's able to authenticate. It should not be. We have let's disable this, comment it. Let's verify if there is anything else. Okay, looks good. So no changes. Let's try to save this file and restart the SSH service again. Okay, now let's try to log in testing SSH on this. Interesting. It should not be. Anyways, we'll see that as well. And meanwhile, let's try to log in via SSH keys rather than with the password. So to do that, what you have to do is, currently I'm at the client machine. There is a command called SSH copy ID, then your SSH key wherever it is present and wherever you want to copy. So I want to copy with testing SSH @ server IP, which is 10.211.55.12. Okay, so it's asking me for the password. Okay, all right, I've given it, and now you see, now try logging into machine with this and check, make sure that only the keys you wanted were added. So before this, let's log. So this is server, and on the server machine, you see this. I don't have any other file other than authorized keys because the key pair I have created on the client machine, not on the server machine. So on the server machine, only authorized keys file is there. If we try to read the content of it, you will see. Okay, so this is the key which I just created from the client machine with this email address testing as such at gmail.com using RSA as algorithm, and this is my public key. Okay, if you want to compare, you can compare as well. Like, how do you do this? You can just try to read id underscore RSA dot pub. If you read this, this is as it is, you find it here. So that means it's a public key. Okay, now let's try to authenticate whatever it says. Okay, copy and paste and see this. It is not asking you for passwords or anything or passphrases because the key passphrase is currently empty and there is no password which has been set up. So we are directly logging or authenticating to the server via SSH keys. So that is a usage and advantage of using keys, and that's how in the industry, lively we log into any of the remote machines where the password is not required. Using SSH keys, you can directly log into the machines. So it's kind of an easy way to set up this and then log into the machine, and whatever you would want to achieve in order to upgrade the packages on the server or some make changes on the server, it's better that you do it via the user. The reason being, then on the server, which user is doing what, server admin can definitely monitor it and can see, okay, W is a command which tells what all users are currently logged into this machine. So there are two users which are currently logged in. One is parallel user that we are seeing here, already logged into this server machine. Another one is the testing as such user. He is logged in from this machine. So these all logs are usually stored in the files where admins and anybody can see the things what this user is doing and what all configurations he's changing or she's changing, or what all updates this user is doing. So we can track down those things as well. So this is kind of easy and good to see. Okay, just to read about and make changes whatever you would want to. So that's how SSH basically let you authenticate via keys to the remote machines. And for example, like you would want to just read the content. So I'll just show for the testing. Let's log into, I think I have it here. Yeah. Where is my pwd? Okay, there is no file. Let's try to create file called test directory test. Okay. I'm just trying to, okay, it's not taking this way, some other way. Anyway, so there are two files which are present inside test directory. Now from the client machine, I want to read the file or read the directory what all files are present on my remote machine without logging to that remote machine and do the ls. I just want to do it directly via SSH. So I can do like this: SSH testing user @ okay. So it is showing me the content of here. So whatever the content you are seeing here, it is showing me up here, right? So you can see the colors here. So the colors will be just a white here. Here the colors are blue because this is a real machine where we have currently logged in, and directory's color will always be in blue default. For the file, it's always been white. So you see these are the two files which are present on my remote machine, and similarly from my client machine I can see these files as well. So this is the advantage. You can use SSH to read the content of the file. What if you want to copy files between SSH and locations? So let's say I'll create here test1.txt. Okay. this is a test file. I want to copy it to my remote machine, so you can use command scp, then remote file location, and then your username, sorry, scp test1, then username, well, /home /testing message. Okay, so now you see that the remote file is being copied over to my this machine. Currently there is no such file called test.txt, but as soon as I do ls again, I should be able to see there is another file. And if you read the content test1.txt, so the file has been copied over. So this is the advantage of using scp command to basically copy over the content from the client machine to the remote machine. So that is how you can copy. Then from remote to local also you can do, like scp testing ssh @211.55.12. so this syntax you don't have to remember, but yeah, you should be aware about how to it's quite simple as well. Like you just have to provide the remote location, then this is a remote location. On that remote location, which file you want to copy. So let's say I want to copy this file 2.txt, so you can use file 2.txt and then this thing where you want to copy to the current directory. So now if you do ls, this file is copied over. So that is how you can copy from the remote machine to local machine, and from local machine to the remote machine. Now there is one thing called port forwarding. So port forwarding is basically being used. Let's say there is a remote server, okay, which is running, let's say Apache Web Services is running on that server. You want to communicate and read the content for that server. You can use it via the IP address of that server and the port 80, and should be able to load the content of that web server. But what if you want to read the content on your local machine, on your local client machine, with your own port, random port, let's say 8888 or 8080. So how do you do that? So you can port forward that your local port to the remote server port, so that you should be able to access the same content whatever is hosted on that remote port, which is 80, on your local port. So but before doing that, let's try to access if there is anything on that local that remote machine running or not. So I'll just show it up to you. Okay, so currently this is on this IP on port 80, web services running, which has a content called welcome to StarGel web server. Okay, what if I want to, instead of using this port 80, I want to use my local host and 8080. So how do I do that? So for that you have to do the port forwarding. So there is a command called sh-L, which port you want to forward of your local to the remote. So you let's say 8080, then local host and the remote server, and testing sh 211.55.12. okay, all right, so now you have forwarded the port. Now let's try to do this localhost and 8080. Okay, let's localhost 8080. You should be able to load the same content, or you can use 127.0.0.1 colon 8080. Okay, what if we don't do the port forwarding? So let's exit that port forwarding connection, and now you try to load the same content. Currently it's coming from the cache, but or it is somewhere. What if I want to say, let's say 8081, there is nothing, no, it's not able to connect. But what if you want to communicate to 8081? So you can do this, and now if you go here, and then you should be able to communicate. So that's how you can forward the port of your local machine to the remote machine, so that basically it is doing this on local machine 8081 port is linked to the remote machine port 80. So and you are able to access the web services, web server, the website, whatever the content it is, you are able to list that from your local machine. Okay, After that, you can just, if you want to exit the connection that we have already seen, exit is a command. So once you exit it, and then it basically locks out the connection from the remote server, and then you can verify, okay, currently you are on the client machine, not on the server machine. So yeah, so that's about about SSH in this chapter.
If you want to learn Linux and get certified from IBM, click on this link given below in the description. That's a wrap for this chapter. I'll meet you in the next episode of this Linux series.